A beard was never just facial hair. For most of human history, a beard was a flag, a banner planted right on a man's face, broadcasting who he was to everyone who looked at him. It could announce that he was a grown man and not a boy. It could signal his status, his wisdom, his power, his tribe, his devotion to his gods. A man's beard spoke for him before he ever opened his mouth. And that is exactly why removing it became one of the most loaded, meaningful, and sometimes shocking things a man could possibly do. Because here is the thing nobody tells you about shaving. It is, when you really stop to think about it, a genuinely bizarre thing to do. Consider what a beard actually is. It is warm, insulating the face against cold and wind. It offers some protection to the skin. And best of all, it grows entirely for free, sprouting from a man's face with zero effort on his part. By every logic of laziness and survival, our ancestors should have just let it grow. And yet, deep in the Stone Age, men started scraping the hair off their faces with sharp and dangerous tools, enduring the nicks and the effort and the endless upkeep, all to remove something their own body kept trying to give them. So why? Why would anyone do that? Why did men start shaving? The answer is one of the strangest and most revealing stories in all of human history, and it has very little to do with simply looking tidy. It is a story about messages, about power, and about a flag that flip-flopped again and again across thousands of years. So let's start with the simplest part of the puzzle. Before we get to the deep meaning, was there a practical reason to shave at all? And the answer is yes, there genuinely was. The most pressing one, as with so much of ancient grooming, was the war against parasites. A thick beard, like a thick head of hair, is a perfect home for lice and other tiny, maddening pests. Keeping the face bare denied those parasites a place to live. In fact, this connection was so well understood that a Roman writer once mocked a bearded philosopher by telling him his beard didn't create wisdom, it created lice, and he should shave it off. So hygiene was a real and practical motive. A clean face was, quite literally, a cleaner, healthier face, and in a world without medicine, that was no small thing. There may have been other practical reasons too. A long beard can be a liability in close, dangerous work or in a fight, something for an opponent to grab and yank. It can get in the way of eating. It can trap dirt and food and grime. So we shouldn't dismiss the practical side. For some men, in some time, shaving really was about comfort, cleanliness, and safety. But as we'll see, practicality is nowhere near the whole story. Because the effort it took to shave, especially in the ancient world, was enormous, far more than simple tidiness could ever justify. And that brings us to the genuinely astonishing part, just how old shaving really is and how hard our ancestors worked to do it. Because humans were removing the hair from their faces a very, very long time ago, long before anything we'd recognize as a razor existed. Some of the oldest cave paintings, made tens of thousands of years ago, appear to depict men with bare beardless faces, which strongly suggests that hair removal was already happening deep in the Stone Age. And we have a good idea of how they managed it because they used the same brilliant material science they used for everything else. They used sharp stone. A freshly struck flake of flint or obsidian, that volcanic glass we've talked about before, can hold an edge sharper than modern steel, and such a flake is perfectly capable of scraping or slicing hair from skin. So a Stone Age man with a carefully made sharp flake and a steady hand could shave, or at least closely trim, his face. It would have been a delicate, risky business, dragging a razor-sharp piece of stone across your own cheeks and throat with no mirror, probably crouched over a still pool of water. But it could be done, and it was put yourself there for a moment. It is dawn tens of thousands of years ago. You crouch at the edge of a still pool, the water just catching the first gray light. In your hand is a flake of obsidian you struck and shaped yourself, its edge finer than any modern steel. You lean over the water, studying the dim, rippling reflection of your own face, and you begin slowly, carefully, to draw that black glass edge across your cheek. One wrong move, one slip, and you open your own skin. There is no soap, no warm water, no second blade if this one shatters. Just patience, a steady hand, and a willingness to do something faintly dangerous to your own face, morning after morning. Now ask yourself the obvious question. What on earth could possibly be worth all that? No one goes to this much trouble just to be neat. Something deeper is driving him. And to understand what, we have to ask why men grow beards in the first place. And stone flakes weren't the only tool in the ancient grooming kit. There is evidence that people removed facial hair using other ingenious methods. One was to use a pair of seashells or clamshells pressed together and used like tweezers to grip and pull out the beard hairs one by one. Imagine the patience and the discomfort of plucking out an entire beard hair by hair with a couple of shells. People used sharpened shells, and by some accounts even sharpened shark teeth, anything that could cut or grip hair. The point is this: removing facial hair was so important to some of our ancestors that they were willing to do it with the crudest, most painstaking, most uncomfortable tools imaginable, tens of thousands of years before anyone invented a proper razor. That is a staggering amount of effort to remove something that grows for free. And effort like that is never really about tidiness, it is about meaning. So here is the question that should be sitting in the back of your mind. If shaving was so much trouble, what message was it worth sending? What did a bare face or a full beard actually say? And this is where the whole story opens up, because the beard turns out to be one of the most powerful social signals the human body has ever produced. In fact, that may be the very reason it exists. Here is a puzzle most people never consider. The beard doesn't keep you notably warmer than a bare face. It doesn't help you find food. It doesn't make you a better hunter. So why did evolution bother giving men beards at all, when women, who are the same species, don't grow them? The leading idea is that the beard is fundamentally a signal. It evolved not to do a practical job, but to send a message. A beard makes a face look larger, more mature, more dominant, and unmistakably male. Many researchers think it arose through the slow pressure of social and sexual selection, as a visual badge of maturity and status that other men would respect, and that signaled a man's stage of life at a glance. In other words, the beard was never really about function. From its very origins, it was about communication. It is, in a deep sense, a flag that the body grows on its own. And once you understand that the beard is, at its core, a message, the whole strange story of shaving suddenly makes sense, because if growing a beard sends a message, then removing it sends a message too. You cannot take a signal that loud off your face without saying something by its absence. Think about it. The beard appears on a man's face at puberty as he becomes physically mature. So from the very beginning, the beard was nature's own badge of manhood, a visible, unmistakable sign that a boy had become a man capable of fathering children, ready to take his place among the adults. The beard was biology's way of writing maturity directly onto the face, and humans, being the intensely social, status-obsessed creatures we are, took that natural signal and ran with it, loading it with layers of additional meaning. In many ancient cultures, a full, magnificent beard became a symbol of wisdom, authority, and power. Picture how we still imagine kings, sages, prophets, and gods, very often with grand, flowing beards. That is no accident. For a great many ancient peoples, the beard was glorious. To wear a great beard was to display your dignity, your seniority, your standing as a man to be respected. The ancient Greeks are a perfect example. They were enormously proud of their beards. A fine beard was a mark of honor, of manhood, of wisdom. Their very gods, mighty Zeus, powerful Heracles, were depicted with full, impressive beards. For a Greek man, the beard was a treasured part of his identity and status, and because it meant so much, cutting it carried enormous weight. The Greeks would cut their beards as a sign of mourning, the dramatic removal of this proud symbol expressing the depth of their grief. And, tellingly, having your beard forcibly cut by someone else was a profound humiliation, a way of stripping a man of his honor and dignity. And this dark side of the beard's power is something we've seen before in these stories, with names, with hair, with tattoos. Because if a beard was a source of pride and identity, then forcibly removing it became a weapon. Across history, cutting off a man's beard against his will was used to shame him, to mark him as a coward or a captive, to dominate and degrade him. Some warrior cultures shamed cowardly soldiers by cutting their beards. To touch a man's beard without permission was in many places a grave insult worth fighting over. The beard was so bound up with a man's very self that controlling it meant controlling him. We keep seeing this same pattern, don't we? The markers of our identity, hair, names, marks on the skin, beards, are so powerful that they can be turned from sources of pride into instruments of control. But here is where the story takes its most fascinating turn. Because if a beard was such a glorious symbol of manhood and power, you'd expect every powerful culture to embrace it. And yet, some of the most sophisticated civilizations in history did the exact opposite. They shaved, and in doing so, they flipped the entire meaning of the beard on its head. The ancient Egyptians are the stunning example. For the Egyptian elite, the ideal was not a glorious beard, but a clean, smooth, hairless face, and often a hairless head as well. To them, being clean-shaven was the height of cleanliness, refinement, and high status. Hairlessness was civilization. The unwashed, the lowly, the uncivilized might be hairy, but a person of importance was smooth and clean. They worked hard to achieve this, using copper razors and even early hair removal creams, scraping and smoothing themselves to a polished hairlessness. But now here is the truly mind-bending part. Even though the Egyptian elite shaved their faces bare, the beard was still such a powerful symbol of authority and divinity that they couldn't quite give it up. So what did they do? They wore fake ones. Egyptian pharaohs are often depicted wearing a long, narrow, artificial ceremonial beard strapped onto their clean-shaven faces. This false beard was a sacred symbol of their power and their connection to the gods. And here is the detail that I find absolutely delightful. Even the female pharaohs, the women who ruled Egypt, wore these ceremonial false beards because the beard had become a pure symbol of royal, divine authority, completely detached from actually growing hair on your face. Think about what that means. They shaved off their real beards because hairlessness meant status, and then strapped on fake beards because the beard also meant power. The beard had become a costume, a flag you could put on and take off at will, so we have two opposite worlds. In one, the natural beard is glory, and to shave is shameful. In the other, the bare face is refinement, and the beard is a detachable badge of office. The exact same patch of facial hair meaning completely opposite things in different places, and the meaning kept flip-flopping throughout history. Consider one of the most famous shaving orders in all of history. The conqueror Alexander the Great, it is said, ordered his soldiers to shave their beards before battle. Now, the practical reason given is wonderfully direct. A beard, the thinking went, was a dangerous liability in close combat because it gave your enemy something to grab onto. Nothing, as one ancient account put it, is handier to grasp in a fight than a beard. Either way, the effect was enormous. The clean-shaven face of the conqueror and his soldiers became fashionable, and shaving spread through the ancient world. A whole civilization changed its face because of war and image. The Romans took up the clean-shaven look with real enthusiasm, and for a man there, his first shave became a genuine rite of passage, a ceremony marking his step into manhood, the very opposite of the Greek idea that manhood meant growing the beard out. Roman men gathered at barbershops to be shaved and to gossip, making the daily scrape a social ritual. And then, centuries later, fashion would swing back, and emperors and men would proudly grow their beards once more, and it never stopped flip-flopping. Beards came roaring back into fashion in some eras, only to vanish again in others, over and over, century after century, right up to our own time. And there is a reason it keeps swinging, like a pendulum. Because once a beard, or a bare face, becomes the firm mark of one generation of the establishment, of your father and his friends, the next generation has a ready-made way to set itself apart. They simply do the opposite. The rebels grow beards when their elders are clean-shaven, and shave when their elders are bearded. The face becomes a battleground between generations, which guarantees the meaning can never sit still for long. We've swung from the bare faces of one generation to the proud beards of the next and back again, more times than anyone can count. Each time, the facial hair carried a message about what kind of man you were, or wanted to be seen as. Now, I have to be honest with you, the way this channel always tries to be. The deep origins here are genuinely fuzzy, and we should admit it. We cannot point to a single first shave or name the first man who scraped his face bare, because hair doesn't fossilize and ancient tools don't come labeled. We're reading clues, the beardless faces in ancient art, the sharp tools, the customs of recorded history, and reasoning carefully backward. And the meaning of the beard varied enormously from culture to culture, sometimes meaning the exact opposite things in places that existed at the very same time. There was never one single reason men shaved. There were dozens, shifting constantly across the ages. But through all that variation, the deep truth holds, and I find it genuinely fascinating. Whether a man grew his beard or scraped it off, he was making a statement. Always, the face became one of humanity's most important billboards, and facial hair, or the lack of it, was the message written across it: manhood or boyhood, status or humility, tradition or rebellion, mourning or celebration, belonging to this group or that one. The presence or absence of a beard was never neutral. It always said something, and we are still doing it today exactly the same way. Every single morning, a man with the ability to grow facial hair makes a choice: to shave or not, to trim a careful style or let it grow wild. And whether he realizes it or not, that choice is a message, read instantly by everyone he meets. We still associate beards with certain kinds of men and clean-shaven faces with others. We still read personality, profession, age, and attitude into the hair on a man's face exactly as our ancestors did for tens of thousands of years. The razor has changed. The deep human habit of writing who we are onto our own faces has not changed at all. So let's bring this whole story together. How and why did ancient men start shaving their beards? They figured out the how astonishingly early, using flint, obsidian, shells, and endless patience to remove their facial hair deep in the Stone Age, long before metal tools existed. But the why is the real story, and it was almost never just about being tidy. It was about meaning. The beard was a flag of manhood status and power, and so its presence or its absence became a language. A clean face could mean cleanliness and refinement in one culture, and cowardice or shame in another. A beard could mean wisdom and authority in one place, and unwashed crudeness in the next. Men shaved to send messages, to belong, to mourn, to fight, to rule, and to be seen the way they wish to be seen. So here is my last question for you. The next time you or a man you know stands in front of the mirror and decides whether to shave this morning, remember that this small, ordinary act sits at the end of a story tens of thousands of years long. A story of flint blades at dawn, of pharaohs and fake beards, of armies shorn before battle, of grief and pride and power, all written in the hair on the human face. So whatever a man's face says today, bearded or bare, here is the real question. Is he choosing that message on purpose? Or is his face speaking a language so ancient and so automatic that he never even realized everyone around him has been reading it his whole life? Let me know what you think in the comments. I genuinely want to hear it. Until then, take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and I'll see you soon.